All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me if you're here. And if you're receiving the recording, that's fine. So, I'm going to go through a bunch of information today about treating kids in clinic. It's something a few years ago I discovered that I was really one of the only kinesiologists that was working with kids. And it was something that had been so natural to me for so many years that um, that it just started opening my eyes. And then, as the universe works, I had other people come to me and ask me, could they come and sit with me so that I could teach them how to work with kids, or they could see the way that I was working. And that happened a few times. And then as time rolled on, I thought, well, I'm just going to make a course out of this. I was pregnant with my second child at the time, and so I couldn't really commit to opening up proper courses face to face. And then as well, some people were in Sydney, some people were in Melbourne, some people were in Queensland. So I decided to run an online course. It was the first time I'd done this, but I've run this course. This will be my fourth or fifth time, and I just love it. It's just awesome. So it's a 6-week course, but I'll go into that at the end as well, because today isn't just about that. Today is about treating kids in clinic as a kinesiologist. So if you don't know me, my name's Emma. I am solely a kinesiologist, a holistic kinesiologist. I have a Bachelor of Health Science as well, which is tacked onto the end. And I've been in practice for, well, this will be my 13th year. I have been treating kids for as long as I've been in clinic. It's interesting the way that you kind of fall into all of this stuff. I'm sure you have a similar story where, you don't really know what you're going to get into, and then it just starts on your doorstep. So I started off in clinic quite young after studying, and my principal at the time from the college asked me to work for him in his clinic treating kids when I graduated. And so he was working with a lot of autism and ADHD and disabilities, doing biofeedback as well as kinesiology. So my role was to be the kinesiologist on site. And I was really, really interested in the neurological side of health at that time. So it jumped at me. I went, yes, absolutely. And I learned so much about working with kids in disabilities at that time. And I had never really been exposed to that much in my life before. So it wasn't something that I went in premeditatively, but it just felt right. And I guess if you're here today, it's because something about working with kids feels right. My first kid in clinic was my first ever client, and public client that just found me online, and he had stomach migraines. So it turns out that it was anxiety based and anger based. His parents had gone through a divorce. His dad had a new partner, so there was so much going on there. And it's working with kids has a beautiful way of building your clinic. I'm just going to be really honest about that, because one, it's so much easier for parents to send their kids in first and then say, oh, okay, I'll come in now too. Two, people will talk about their kids a lot. So in Sydney, when I was working, as the years progressed, I was getting lots of people in clinic who said, oh, I was down at the soccer fields and so-and-so mentioned your name, and then another person piped up behind me and said, oh, yes, so go see Emma, and then another person, oh, yes, go see Emma. And mums will chat about their kids a lot more than they'll chat about themselves. So it was a really nice thing to fall into in a community, because it helped my business grow and it helped me put my gifts and skills and the kinesiology out there. Plus, kids are amazing to work with. I just love working with them. They're so full of love and they're so wise as well. And there are so many times you just get your socks blown off with the stuff that they say. And, you know, I think the innocence of working with a child as well, and the innocence of their life and their decisions, and it's just been such a beautiful path for me to follow. This story is coming up in my mind where I've been seeing some clients for 8, 9, 10 years, and I see them on a monthly basis. So I started seeing this boy when he was 8 years old, and he used to run and hide underneath the desk every time he'd come in, and he never wanted to come in. And he's just graduated high school. And, you know, he called me at schoolies and he was like, I just need a debrief. You know, I just want to chat about some stuff that's going on. And then he called me again a couple of Saturdays ago and he said, okay, I just got this girl issue. Can you just chat it out with me? And it's just been so beautiful to be on that journey with him. And then there's other ones who we've gone in and out of the drug issues together, and you know, come out the other side, or through OCD or through anxiety, you know, just watching kids grow up and helping be, you know, them letting us be part of their journey of life has just been incredible. So if you get the chance to work with kids, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. I think the other reason we're being called here is because our kids are so overwhelmed, and it still causes me a lot of, I guess, unrest, because our systems are failing our kids. They're in the school system which doesn't suit childhood anymore at all. Plus we're living in a society which doesn't suit childhood a lot anymore. We've got heightened nervous systems based off busy lives, based off survival stress in the home, based off unpredictability of environments. So I think even though there's been a lot of fear through the generations, there was a predictability of environment, whereas now we don't really have that. We have so much changing in our worlds. We have so much changing that we're exposed to. Kids are exposed to a lot via technology that can be accidental or can be, you know, purposeful, or, you know, and then you've got the teenagers that are exposed to porn so quickly, and then that whole side of things is warped. And then on the early scale, you've got kids who, I have a friend who's a director of a childcare centre, and she had a book that she gave one of the 2-year-olds, and the 2-year-old got the front of the book and swiped it. Didn't know how to open a book. And, you know, I know that usually the kind of clients that we see aren't going to be like that, but our nervous systems are taking such a beating, our health is taking such a beating with the food and the chemicals and everything in our environment. It's really hard for a child's body to cope in the world anymore, and then mentally have to try and keep up as well. It's such challenging time, and I think there's still a lot of unawareness around the effect that all of this has on childhood and happiness, and confidence in children. So a big part of me wanting to help kinesiologists be comfortable with working with kids is the more of us out there that can bring to light what's going on for a child, the better it is for childhood as a whole. And the ripple effect of that, I feel, is enormous. You know, if there's you know 100 of us all over Australia at least practicing with kids, you know, that they affect everyone else around them as well, and then that affects everyone, and that affects everyone. So if you're being called to be here working with kids, I think it's not just about you getting confident, it's about really honouring that call within you. And I'm not saying you have to do my course in order to be part of it, but just honouring that within yourself and let the fear slip aside and just run forward with it, because we really, really need more practitioners like us. I think there's so many westernized things that are about diagnosis, and it's so a lot of the other therapies are geared towards, okay, you diagnose and then you add this and that technique on top and train the child in a certain way. There's not that many modalities which enable a child to get back to their original nature and just communicate with the parent, with the child, what's actually going on. And that's mainly what I'm doing when I'm working with children. And I'll make this really, really clear. What I do with children is help them communicate what is going on internally for them, what is functional for them and what is dysfunctional for them. And I do this over and over and over again. And you're just giving words to stress. That's all you're doing as a kinesiologist with kids. You're giving words to stress. So for instance, if I'm seeing a child who's not sleeping, where, we're doing the body work to calm the nervous system and everything as well, but we're verbalizing what they're worried about. We're verbalizing what they haven't processed in their life. We're verbalizing what's causing their cortisol levels to rise, whether that's environmental based, whether it's diet based, whether it's deficiency based nutritionally, or whether it's stuff that's going on in the home or with their parents or at school. We're just giving a voice to stress. And if that's the one thing you take away from today working with kids, that's amazing. So it's not about following a procedure in clinic when you're working with kids. It's about listening and communicating for them. A big part of what I do with kids is I find and verbalize, find and verbalize, find and verbalize, find and verbalize. So you find in the body where the tension is. So you're holding it, you're holding an acupuncture point, you're scanning the body, you're doing your fascial release, you're energetically tuning in, whatever it is that sits with you, your Reiki, and then you listen. You listen to what it's saying. And so some people that comes through with a feeling physically. For some people, it will come through as a voice. For some people, it'll come through as a vision. And I found that the more I originally got it through feeling, I would physically get the feeling that the child was getting. And now I see and hear as well. So the more you open up those channels, the easier it all gets. But the body really does hold so much communication ready to be let forth. And then you verbalize it and you talk about it, and then you help them process it. And by helping them process it, for instance, so I'll say, okay, so what's going on at school? Is it with the teacher? Is it with your friends? It's holding here. Let's talk about it. Where are you putting up defense mechanisms where there shouldn't be defense mechanisms? Where can we help you let those defense mechanisms go and start to feel safe and happier in the world? And when you feel safe in the world, then your vagus nerve switches on, your digestion works, your hormones work, your neurotransmitters work, everything works, your gut works, everything heals, you detox better. So it's so important to make a child feel safe. And when a child is heard, they feel safe. It is amazing to just verbalize what is going on for a child. And then you see this instant, oh, okay, that's what I'm feeling. That's why. That's, they don't have the awareness often to go, Mum, this thing happened at school and I'm still worried about it. I'm still tense about it days afterwards. They just act with behavioral, emotions, and or the tension tightens until they can release, or they can't find the words yet because they're too young, or they haven't been taught how to communicate emotions yet. So by verbalizing the tension, that's held in the body, you give words to it and you give the parent understanding of what's going on for the child. And then more often than not, natural parental instincts take over, and they understand the child. The tension breaks down between the dynamics as well, and the child feels understood and therefore safe. And at home, then the parent can understand, okay, well, this behaviour isn't just behaviour, it's caused by the emotion, and we're still processing through that. The parent has an idea now of what's going on. We don't know what happens with our children at school. How was school today? Oh, it was fine, it was good. And it's not until you know as a parent that something's going on, but how are you meant to know? So we become the communicator, the interpreter for the child and their body. There's so much more I want to share with you, and I guess that's the point of the course, is that I have buckets and buckets of knowledge and wisdom and experience to share. And it keeps coming because I'm still in clinic and I still work with kids, and there's still more stuff that I learn every day. And I think it's in order for us to change the way that childhood is progressing for kids, which is at the moment stress, tension, and if you're not coping with the tension, then you've got a dysfunction within you. It's really scary. Anxiety has only increased since I've been in clinic in kids. I've got 9-year-olds who are having suicidal thoughts, and they're not actual suicidal thoughts. They're tension to the point where their brain is breaking with tension. And it's just so sad because we've lost the art of childhood, and it's not about just saying, go and run around or do this, that. But you need to educate the parents on what their child needs. And we all know what's good for our children, but sometimes it's just having somebody verbalize that for our individual life circumstances. And for when you're treating a child, you're treating the parent, and you're hearing the parent, and you're hearing them explain to you what's been going on in their dynamic and why things are dysfunctional in the first place. And because when you're with a child and you're bringing up what's going on for them, naturally you're going to open up that conversation with the parent. I always have the parent in the room, no matter how uncomfortable that gets. Get the parent in the room up until about 14, 15, and you're talking about what's going on for the child, and therefore you're expressing, and therefore that opens up the conversation with the parent about what's going on for them. And the child one then hears what's going on and has words for it now, and it's not just snippets of things they're hearing in the background or feelings that are going in the background. And it just releases tension on so many levels. A thing that I started hearing from from studying is children who take on parents' emotions. And I want to be really, really clear with you here that this is not a useful thing to do in clinic. It's not useful to say that your child is picking up on your emotions. Never, 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 never. Because in reality, what you have is a child who is reacting to the parent, right? Because some children will react to the parent, some children won't. And making a parent who is already under stress feel more guilty for having emotions is not going to help the dynamic. So straight out saying, oh, the child's taking on your emotions is not useful. What you're going to say is what's resonating here. What are you both feeling? What in the two empathetic souls here, you're both picking up on the same stress, and you're both trying to process through the same stress. So what's the stress? Can we talk about the stress and why that's affecting the child as well as you? And if we can help the child understand what the parent is going through on it in the language of a child, then the child then feels safe again. The only reason a child picks up on a parent's emotion is because they're trying to make themselves feel safe. And if mum feels safe, then I feel safe. Also, the empathetic soul will try and fix the parent, but it's only to make themselves feel safe. So if the child feels safe and knows that the parent is just going through this emotional period and then it will end, that's a very handy thing to give to a lot of children, is that this is temporary. This stress is temporary, and stress is always temporary. It's like when you're watching a movie with a child, I'll always say to my little boy, when tension rises in a movie, he will often start wriggling around or making funny noises, and he's 6. And, you know, he'll get really antsy, and other kids will, you know, internalize. It just depends on the child, but this is what Cobes does. And so I'll start noticing his behavior going, and I'll understand that that's an emotional based thing, and I'll say to him that good things always happen after bad things. The bad things are temporary. The good things will come after that, and the good things will always keep coming. And it's something that, with so much stress in our world and with our nervous system so hyper aware and on survival mode, we're always looking for things that we have to be aware of. So what happens is that the nervous system switches on, all of our senses go haywire, so hyper aware, and I'm breaking this down into really simplistic terms, but we tense, our senses become hyper aware, saying, okay, there's some sort of danger out there. And then our brain has to scan our lives to see why we're actually stressed. Whereas in reality, we're tense because our environments are tense, because we're on the go all the time. We've got too much to process and not enough downtime to process it. So our brains are constantly looking for the things that are going wrong in order to solve them so that we can feel safe. Whereas in reality, we just haven't learnt how to yet. And you know, when we're working with anxious kids and kids who are switched on all the time, it's important for them to know that there's always going to be things that are stressful. They will end, and it's all going to be okay. And we don't need to be on the lookout for, is mum okay all the time? Is dad okay all the time? Is grandma okay all the time? It's just that we go through periods of stress, and then we resolve them, and it's all okay. So that's how I hope that makes sense. I kind of went in a long way around there. That's how we make children understand the ups and downs in life. It's not about blaming the parent in that you've got this emotion that you're not dealing with, and therefore the child's picking up on it. You know, parents are always trying to do their best. That's something that we have to become really, really aware of in clinic when we're working with parents. Particularly when we've got an opinion about diet and about the environment and things like that. It's very much understanding that that parents they're just trying to do the best with what they have. And when you're on survival mode yourself, you don't always make the best decisions. So let's not guilt and shame parents into the certain decisions that they're making. It's just about saying, look, this option might be a little bit better because it will ease this stress that the child has. And then give them time to introduce that. The other very, very important part about working with kids in clinic is that you're seeing them for a minimum 3 to 5 times. You never ever just do one session with a child, because you're going to dump the parent with a bunch of information and the child with a bunch of information. You're going to get them back to a nice reset point, hopefully. And then life inevitably gets back out of whack, and you need that check-in point for the parent and for the child to get them to discuss, what's gone right and what's gone wrong, what was easy to implement, what wasn't. And you need to have time to build rapport. There's very rarely you'll get all the information in one session. So you might think you've done the most amazing, session or whatever, and they come back and there's still tons more information underneath. It's just what life is. It's just what humans is. It's just what being human is. So you need that check-in point afterwards. Also, when you're working with kids, the first session is often just about rapport building. So you don't have to do a lot in that first session. It's about information gathering. And going, okay, right, well, this is what I think the imbalance is. Let's now start working with that. So don't put a lot of pressure on yourself to fit everything in that one session. Kids under 7 have a 20-minute attention span, and kids over that will generally have a 40-minute. Now, this, of course, varies, but you can definitely see that 20-minute mark, and they'll start wriggling or wanting to go home, So don't necessarily push the time on the table past that. And what I'll do is I'll get them in, have a discussion. I'll set that first one for an hour, whereas in reality it's more like 45 minutes. So you have that discussion of what's going on with the parent. And then I'll always communicate with the child as well. You always communicate with the child as well, no matter how young, from 2-3 years old, you're putting it back in their language. You're saying, oh, okay, mum is saying that your sleep is bad because your body is tense, and I'm going to help your body relax. So because kids will be in the clinic room and they'll hear mum talking about all the stuff that's wrong with them, and of course that's going to trigger all of those human primal emotions of shame and guilt and fear, because they've usually gotten into trouble for those things, so they're waiting to get into trouble. And so you're just letting them know, you're not here to give, this isn't your fault. This is why it's going on. It's because your body is tense. It's because you've been sad. It's because there's been a lot of change. And then, and I'm going to help you fix it, so that it takes that responsibility off their little shoulders. So you're communicating towards, and they might actually be actively listening, or they might be playing with something over in the corner. And it doesn't matter, you're still communicating with them. So that's how you do the intake, and then you jump them on the table, or you sit on the floor with them. And again, you're finding and you're communicating. You're finding, you're communicating, you're finding, you're communicating. When you're holding points, they're very short points. More often than not, you're trying to find the things in their relationships and their environment which are causing them stress. Therefore, the parents are aware of that and can work with that at home a little bit more, or at least be aware that, okay, if their behaviour's off, it could be because all this stuff is going on. So sometimes you're working on the table, and then other times you're running around the room with them or sitting on the floor with them. A lot of the times, particularly with anxiety, they won't actually lie up on the table first. I get them to sit on mum. I hold their feet. I'm on the floor underneath them always. I'm never standing over them on the table. I always sit, so I'm eye to eye with them, or even lower than them, so that it's not that intimidation. And you let them play. They don't have to lie still. They're gonna get their defensive mechanisms up, so you have to be aware of not biting into that defense mechanism, but hearing it as I'm stressed, and taking that as, okay, I need to explain more of what I'm doing, because what we do is very confusing, you're touching them, and then you're talking about very personal stuff that you have really they think that you have no idea about. And it's just such a weird experience for them, I think, a lot of the time. And some kids love it, and some kids they're not very good with their things that they don't know, so they will put up their defense mechanisms. So if they're putting up their defense mechanisms, don't react in irritation, or it can charge you as well. It can bring up your defense mechanism, so just be really aware of that. And just know that you probably just need to explain a little bit more what you're doing. And again, you're just doing that for 20 minutes. And you keep coming back, and you can do the same stuff and go over the same stuff in a few sessions. And that's fine. Sometimes we just need that in order to process. Other kids, I'm sitting on the ground with them playing, and I'm using mum as a surrogate. So they're the little ones, or the disabled ones usually, or the ones with severe difficulties. Other times, I use the brachioradialis. So that's this one, and you're pushing down. Because they can flop around everywhere and still use that. They don't have to worry about holding it up straight. So you use the brachioradialis as your muscle testing, and you do it quickly. If it's not working, you don't push it. You move on to massaging or talking, and you find things the old-fashioned way. So make it easy on yourself. Don't put a lot of pressure on yourself to come up with all the solutions in the one session. You're just finding one solution possibly. And then if you're allowing that space for yourself, you'll be surprised what comes up, because you're not stressed and tense and putting any pressure on a stressed and tense child and their parents. Does anyone have any questions as well? How's this all sitting with you? I'd love to answer some questions that you have about working with kids, or the concerns that you have. Please feel free to chat in the box there. So I work with newborns right through. And this is something that in the course that I go through each age group. I go through what's the common things developmentally that I run into. So for instance, newborns, we've got latch, we've got colic, we've got sleeping, we've got, and then toddlerhood, we've got like fussy eating and meltdowns and toilet training issues that we go through. So I go through the really physical stuff, but the emotional side of things as well. School age, I go through each of the ages and what the emotional stuff that each age group is where they're up to developmentally, emotionally, as well as physically. So they're the common things that you'll see in clinic, and then my understanding of them on a holistic level, and how I treat them in clinic. And then I've got teenagers as well, which I just have a huge passion for teenagers. They're big toddlers, so I love seeing toddlers as well, but I love working with teenagers because they don't have a lot of spaces just to chat openly anymore. But I'll go into all of that as well. If you're interested in the course, I'm going to send this recording out with a link to the course as well. It starts on the 13th of January, so just a couple of weeks away. So the way that it's structured, it's all online, it's all text. There's procedures there, there's no tests, there's no assignments, it's just information-based. I just want to get everything I know out there to you. So essentially it's like reading a book, but having that book delivered to you one page at a time each day, if that makes sense. So if you can imagine each age group as a chapter, then each week you'll have access to that chapter online, and then each day I've broken all of the components down into 6 mini components, and you'll have those delivered to your inbox each day. And then I have a webinar each week as well, which I go over all the content and answer any questions. We talk about the procedures. It's another download of information, really. I also have all the other webinars, 1 hour webinars from all the other courses that you can access as well. So because it's just verbatim. And so there is a ton of information there as well. There's the Facebook group, which people are always posting stuff on. I love this little group. I've seen this client, this is, can anybody give me a heads up? Or, it's just a really nice space in there. What else can I tell you about it? You have lifetime access. So, yes, it's delivered over 6 weeks. I've structured it so you've got 6 weeks, but it's not essential that you finish it in that 6 weeks. I know that we have school starting in the middle of the course, and we have Australia Day, and it's still holidays and all that kind of stuff. I know that. So you'll have it delivered, but you'll have the content there for you to read through whenever you want. It's not a massive amount of content. It's a good chunk of it. There's a lot of information in there, but it shouldn't be too hard to read through, if that makes sense. And hopefully it's inspiring enough that it's actually easy to read through. I don't put a huge emphasis on the procedures. The procedures are more there to give you a background as to what are the kind of things that I would look for as dysfunctions that are contributing to this issue in clinic. So, for instance, ADHD, these are all the things that I would see that are contributing to that. So I'm not, I don't think that my procedures are the best in the world or anything. I just want to give you the information so that then you can treat it in your own gifted way. So there's no have-tos in this course. It's just a bunch of information. So I've got a question, which is, I'm thinking of a possible client who is a 14, 15-year-old who's just been diagnosed with high-functioning autism. They haven't been attending school. It's too stressful. So there's a high rate of what they call school refusal at the moment. I'm getting a lot of them in. It's because school is a highly sensory place. Even the hallways are highly charged events. So if they're refusing school, their body doesn't feel safe to walk into school. And because it doesn't feel safe, their body goes into survival even thinking about it. So they actually can't physically get them in. So our role is to, one, calm their nervous system so that their amygdala isn't so heightened and triggered. Two, it's helping them process emotionally what's going on at school. Quite often we've gone into a survival state because we're just not processing the emotional stuff that's going on underneath. So it's a mix of listening, asking the body, and then again, just communicating the tension that's being held. Teenagers don't have that reflective part yet. Really, there's so much going on moment to moment for them that they don't stop and reflect a lot. And again, that's to do with the frontal lobe rewiring. But just verbalizing to them, well, that this thing that happened 2 years ago, even if it was just someone bumping them in the hallway, that can put your nervous system on fight or flight, particularly if that was in the first couple of days of high school. So your nervous system, every time it goes down the hallway, is going to feel charged or heightened because it's watching out for danger. Remember, for someone whose sensory system is heightened, you've got the bell rings and then you run to class, you download information, you've got the social side going on, you've got all the hormone stuff going on, you've got this internal changing going on, the emotions are high anyway. And then an hour, 40 minutes or 40 minutes to an hour later, the bell rings again, and then you're off in the hallways and you're going to a different class and you got to sit and concentrate. Like, there's a lot of disruption there for the nervous system. So again, I think that the school systems just aren't working for our teenagers. And there's so much pressure, long days that, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. sometimes, depending on the schools. It's just intense. And then they're expected to do 3 hours of homework in the afternoon, plus have some sort of social life and family life and downtime within all of that. They're not getting enough sleep. They're on their phones, trying to keep connected to the world as well, because that is the most important thing in teenagehood, is identity. So it's so hard for them. So that's another part I'll go into in the course as well. But you can see my passion with it when I'm talking about it. I just want to be able to give you as much as I can to help you. I know that you'll know a lot of this stuff, but it's that clicking moment of, yes, okay, that makes more sense. Hopefully I can give you a little bit more context around it and place it into, being able to identify in clinic all the possibilities that are going on for the issues for the client at that time. And then, if you feel confident, then hopefully that helps you get into a really good listening space as well. But thank you so much for listening. I have so much more I could tell you, but I don't want to overload you. I'll send out this recording. Please pass it on to as many kinesiologists as you can. One day soon, I'll have one of these courses for the public. That's on my list for this year. But for now, I'm helping kinesiologists get really comfortable with working with kids in clinic. But thank you so much, everybody. And I will speak to you again. Bye-bye.